Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we're talking about Zero Trust architecture, one of the most important shifts in cybersecurity in the last decade. If you're interviewing for any cybersecurity role right now, there's a good chance you'll be asked about Zero Trust. By the end of this video, you'll understand what Zero Trust actually is, the core principles of it, how to implement it in real organizations, and a real-world example of Zero Trust in action. So without further ado, let's get started. So what exactly is Zero Trust? It is not a product you can buy. It is a security framework and a set of principles for how you design and operate your security. The core principle is to never trust and always verify. This is a foundational principle, as in Zero Trust, we trust nothing by default. Now let's move on to look at some more core principles. Principle 1 is to assume breach. This is a mindset shift. Traditional security asks, how do we keep attackers out? Whereas Zero Trust asks, what do we do when they're already in? Is it assumes attackers are already somewhere in your environment, so you design your security so that even if they are, they can't move around, access sensitive data, or cause damage. Principle 2 is to verify explicitly. Don't just check a username and password. Use all available data to make authentication and authorization decisions. Next is least privilege access. This gives users the minimum access they need to do their job and only when they need it. This is to limit the blast radius. If an account is compromised, the attacker only gets access to what that account had access to right then and there, not everything it could theoretically access. Next is microsegmentation. Don't have one big trusted network. Break it into tiny segments. This way, if an attacker compromises a web server, for example, they can't just pivot to every other system. They will be stuck in that tiny segment. And lastly is continuous verification, because once again, you never trust and always verify. And don't verify just once and trust forever. Keep verifying throughout the session. Now that we know what Zero Trust is, let's look at some key components. Zero Trust requires multiple technologies to work together. So let's break this down by looking at some of the components. First is identity and access management. This is the foundation, as you need robust identity verification. The goal here is to know exactly who is trying to access resources and verify their identity strongly. Next is multi-factor authentication, as password alone aren't enough. MFA requires multiple forms of verification. This is non-negotiable in Zero Trust, so that even if credentials are stolen, MFA will block access. Another component is endpoint security. This is to not just verify the user, but to verify the device, so that even if the device is compromised or out of compliance, it will deny or limit access. Another key component we just saw is network segmentation, which is once again to break your network into small isolated segments, so that the traffic between segments requires explicit authorization. If one segment is compromised, it's contained. The fifth one will be the least privilege and role-based access controls with minimal permissions. This uses just-in-time access to grant elevated privileges temporarily when needed and then revokes them. Visiting again is continuous monitoring, as you need visibility into everything like network traffic, authentication attempts, resource access, and user behavior patterns. The goal here is to detect anomalies in real time and respond automatically. Next is encryption everywhere. Don't just encrypt traffic leaving your network, encrypt internally too, meaning data in transit, data at rest, and even internal communication between services. Lastly is software-defined perimeter, also called Zero Trust network access. This makes your resources invisible by default. They don't even appear to exist until after successful authentication and authorization. All these components work together to implement Zero Trust principles. No single product does it all, as it is an architecture. With the components now defined, let's move on to a real-world example of Zero Trust with Google BeyondCorp. This is one of the most famous Zero Trust implementations and has been openly documented for how Google eliminated their VPN using Zero Trust. The challenge was that Google had over 85,000 employees spread across the entire world, and like most companies, they originally used VPN-based access. Problems include VPNs being slow and clunky, employees having broad access to internal resources, the trusted internal network model didn't fit Google's security needs, and managing VPN at a large scale was operationally complex. Google realized the perimeter security model was fundamentally broken, and they needed a new approach. BeyondCorp was their solution, being built in 2011 to be their implementation of Zero Trust. Let's break down how it works. Step 1 is device inventory and trust. Every device that wants to access Google resources gets enrolled in a device inventory system. The system assigns each device a trust score based on the OS version, security patches, disk encryption, if it's managed by Google's device management, and if there are any signs of compromise. So with this, a fully patched encrypted managed device with no red flags gets a high trust score, whereas an out-of-date device with issues gets a low score. Step 2 was user authentication. This was strong identity verification for all users. Multi-factor authentication is required and user identity is continuously verified. Step 3 is access proxy, as all access to internal resources goes through an access proxy. There's no VPN and there's no trusted network. When you try to access a resource, the proxy checks who you are with user authentication. The proxy then checks what device you're using with the device trust score. The proxy then checks what device you're trying to access, and the proxy lastly makes a real-time decision to allow or deny. And this happens for every request, even if you're sitting in a Google Office or using a Google-owned device. Lastly is continuous authorization. This is so that trust isn't granted for a session, it's evaluated per request. So per request, the system re-evaluates if your device is still secure, if your behavior is still normal, and if you're still authenticated recently enough. With this, Google completely eliminated their VPN. This change resulted in multiple benefits. With the VPN gone, there was no VPN infrastructure to maintain, it was easier to scale, and there was consistent access models across all locations. There was also an improved security posture, as there was no privileged internal network to now exploit. Even if an attacker stole credentials, they would still need the right device with the right trust score. And there was a better user experience, because with no VPN to connect to, there was faster access to resources, and workers could work seamlessly from any location. Google has since published papers about BeyondCorp, which has helped popularize Zero Trust. Many other companies have also followed this model. This is Zero Trust in action at a massive scale, to show that it's not just theoretical and that it works in the real world. Now that we've learned how Zero Trust works in the real world, how exactly do you actually implement it? Let's go through a practical roadmap broken into phases. Phase 1 is to assess and plan, as before you implement anything, you need to understand your environment. This is the stage where you identify critical assets, map data flows, assess current security, and define goals. Learn what Zero Trust success looks like for your organization, and be sure to be specific. Implement Zero Trust is just too vague. Require MFA for all admin access is more specific. Phase 2 is Identity Foundation. Zero Trust is built on strong identity. Deploy a modern identity and access management solution. Centralize identity management here, as all authentication should go through your IAM. Be sure to deploy multi-factor authentication everywhere as well. It should be used for emails, software as a service applications, admin access, and any sensitive systems. Moving on, we'll look at Phase 3, Device and Endpoint Security. This is where you verify devices, not just users. Deploy endpoint detection and response on all devices. And remember, before granting access, verify the OS version, security software, disk encryption, and that the device is compliant with company policies. Phase 4 is Network Segmentation. This is where you divide your network into small isolated segments. Each segment contains a minimal set of resources. Remember to remove implicit trust here. Every connection should require verification. Phase 5 implements the principle of least privilege, a common security framework. These steps in this phase are important as they minimize what each user can do. Users get permissions based on their job role, nothing more. Be sure to also regularly review who has access to what, and to possibly automate this with IAM tools. The final phase is Phase 6, to monitor and improve. Phase 6 is just basically what you do on a daily occurrence. You go through all of your comprehensive logs that capture everything, you implement SIEMs, examine user behavior analytics, and focus on continuous improvement, where you refine policies and respond to new threats. The timeline for setting this up can look different for any organization. Small orgs taking 6 to 12 months, medium orgs taking 1 to 2 years, and large enterprises taking anywhere from 2 to 3 years and even more for full implementation. However, the key thing here to remember is to start small. You can get quick wins with multi-factor authentication and identity access management, and then you can simply build from there. Let's wrap up this video with key takeaways you need to remember, especially for interviews. Takeaway number 1 is the perimeter security is dead, as the perimeter is now everywhere and nowhere at once. You can't draw a line around inside and outside anymore, and Zero Trust acknowledges this reality. It's the modern security model for a world without clear network boundaries. Takeaway number 2 is to verify everything and to trust nothing. This is a core principle: to never trust and always verify. Takeaway number 3 is that this is a journey, not a product. You can't buy Zero Trust, and you really can't implement it in a single day. It is a framework of principles and an architectural approach, not just a single tool. If asked about Zero Trust in an interview, explain that location and network are no longer the primary security boundaries. Zero Trust requires continuous verification of identity, device health, and authorization for every access request. And that basically wraps up this video. Thank you to everybody that has watched this far, and I hope it taught you a lot about Zero Trust architecture and prepared you for future cybersecurity interviews. As always, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and be sure to have a nice day. Thank you.